Welcome back to Bears Talk. I am Bryan Perez, the managing editor of BearsTalk.com. And on today's episode, we're going to take an evergreen approach. We're going to talk about the NFL preseason and specifically and obviously what it means for the Chicago Bears. This 2023 preseason feels like it's a little bit more important than preseasons in the past, with expectations rising for the Bears inside and outside of Hallis Hall. What they do over the next 3 weeks in these preseason games, it's going to matter. So, yes, we'll touch on the Titans and a bigger picture that extends beyond that into the Colts and the week against the Bills. What should you be thinking about the preseason? Does it matter for a player like Justin Fields? All that and more on today's episode. Come on back. Let's have some Bears talk.
We're going to be an effort-based team.
Darnell being Darnell.
Love playing football.
Ready to open this thing up. Let them know that we're coming.
Before we dive into the Chicago Bears preseason analysis, I have to remind all of you Bears fans out there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're on a mission to 10,000 subscribers by the end of this season. We're almost at 3,000 already, and it's all because of what you guys and gals have been doing up to this point. We can't thank you enough for the support. This is a grassroots, organic effort to grow this channel, and it's a credit to you diehard Bears fans out there for getting us this far already in such a quick period of time. We want to hit 10,000, hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, go to BearsTalk.com. Make sure you check out all the Chicago Bears news and daily analysis that we're putting up there for you guys to consume and play around with our mock draft simulator. It's 100% free, 7 rounds of goodness. You can make trades. Bears have 2 first-round picks. Maybe you want to throw one out there and accumulate more 2025 draft picks. You be Ryan Poles. You decide what is next for this Bears team over the next year's draft and the year after that. Play with that mock draft simulator. Have some fun. It's free. It's for you. It's for Bears fans. You know what else is for Bears fans? The NFL preseason. You know why I love the preseason? Because finally, we have reached that point in the football calendar where we're not going to worry about the narrative that's being created from beat writers at the practice field. Guys who may be focusing on just Justin Fields' throws and only hyper focusing on a bad pass or hyper focusing on a negative rep from Darnell Wright. It gets to the point where after the first or second padded practice, it's like, I've had enough. I've had enough of refreshing Twitter and trying to see what somebody else thinks about what they're seeing. It's frustrating. I can't get to practices this year. I can't see it with my own eyes, but the preseason brings us all to a level playing field. All of you out there, myself included, we get to trust our own eyes now when it comes to analyzing this team and assessing Justin Fields, assessing the depth on this roster, watching DJ Moore. I don't know if Chase Claypool will play against the Titans, but he's going to play at some point in the preseason. So getting a feel for how he's playing and not relying on a handful of Chase Claypool haters or Chase Claypool fanboys on Twitter. We get to make our own assessment because we'll see it live on the field against opponents who are not familiar to them. That's the greatest test to see the development of a player. What do they do when they're going against a guy that they're not having dinner with the night before? Yes, offensive and defensive players, they compete. It gets intense in training camp. You guys know that. This is not like a friendly backyard game of tag football in training camp. These guys are fighting for their livelihood and they're fighting for their jobs. So, of course, the level of competition is going to be high even within your own roster. But there's something very different when you strap on the pads and you're going up against another team, even in a preseason game. Because remember, the starters might only play a series or 2, or the deeper we get into the preseason, could play a quarter or a half. But it doesn't mean that when the backups go in, that level of intensity drops. Maybe the level of talent drops. The product on the field will naturally get a little bit worse, but it's not like the intensity goes back to what a practice environment would be like. These guys are trying to show not only to the Bears that they belong on the 53-man roster, but if the Bears decide that they're not cut out for Chicago, this is an audition for these players. You're going to see a guy like Treston Ebner, a backup running back on the Bears who's fighting for a roster spot right now. And even though he's starting to turn the momentum around and pick up some positive feedback from a guy like Coach Matt Eberflus, he needs to have a big preseason to make not only the Bears roster, but if that doesn't happen, to like look the part that another team, maybe a Colts team that might have some running back depth issues, maybe a team like, I don't know, the Cincinnati Bengals might have some depth issues at running back. The Bears decide to cut Treston Ebner, maybe one of those running back needy teams sees how he does in a preseason environment, and they scoop him up. And he goes from one team's trash to another team's treasure. So preseason games offer that for all of these guys. And for the Chicago Bears, there is meaning behind these games, especially the 2023 Chicago Bears. And we start at the top with Justin Fields. Justin Fields doesn't have to be a perfect MVP-like quarterback in exhibition games. Nobody is expecting that. That's not the litmus test for him. He doesn't have to be a perfect player in these preseason games. You'd be insane to think that that's what he has to do. But Justin Fields should show Bears fans that he's progressed. He should show Bears fans who haven't been at practice, or even the Bears fans in media who have been at practice, that his promising performances up to this point haven't been just because, again, you're going through the paces against players and teammates that you know. You have to be able to show on the field against a quality opponent that you're developing as a quarterback, where you have complete control over the offense's rhythm and timing. The processing has sped up to the point where if you have to come off your first read, you get to the second and even third read quicker than you did in 2022, where maybe you relied on your legs a little bit too much. You have to show that you can move the ball down the field and lead to at least maybe a 3-point drive, maybe even a touchdown in your one possession that you get in the preseason game. That would be the perfect start to the preseason for a guy like Justin Fields. Drive it down the field and put points on the board in a limited outing, right? A limited performance where you're not going to be getting 2, 3, 4 series to kind of lather up and kind of grease up the old throwing arm. You're not going to have that many opportunities to make a statement. So if Justin Fields can come out and do that quickly in the first preseason game and then stack a better second preseason game where he's going to probably play a majority of the first half and then finish it off with his best performance in the third preseason game against the Buffalo Bills, that builds that momentum going into the first game of the season against the Green Bay Packers. Because look, I know there's a lot of you out there who don't want Justin Fields to play in the preseason. You know, keep him on ice, keep him fresh for the regular season in week 1 when the Bears, kick off the year against the Packers. But I don't know. I don't agree. Like, to me, I don't want Justin Fields' first throw against a live opponent to be week 1 against the Packers, because I don't think that will look well. That won't go well. That won't look right. We don't want Justin Fields to be rusty in his first outing of the year against the Green Bay Packers. Look, you guys know as well as I do, the experience on Twitter when you start interacting with, or is it even Twitter now? I don't know. Is it X? What are we actually calling this? Is it X? I guess we have to call it that. So on X, your experience on X with Packers fans can be literally like almost as bad as being waterboarded. It's torture. It is painful. It is nauseating. It makes you want to find the deepest, darkest corner of a cave and hide and never come out, because these Packers fans are relentless trolls who literally don't understand what life without a Hall of Fame quarterback is like. 30 years from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. And for one reason or another, they feel so entitled to just attack and attack and attack. So if Justin Fields, the Bears quarterback, which would maintain the same narrative just on the other end of the spectrum, the Bears have been 40 years without a legitimate quarterback, Packers fans will find a lot of joy and a lot of pleasure to come after Bears fans early in the 2023 season on X and just go nuts. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to have my opening NFL Sunday absolutely ruined because Justin Fields looks average or below average against the most hated rival for every Bears fan from now until the end of time. So get the rust shaken off now. Like, deal with it now. Have a bad game against the Titans. I could care less. You could care less. Have a bad game against the Titans. Get those ground balls out of your system now, and then level it up when you go against the Colts in week 2 of the preseason and build that momentum so you're starting to climb and peak after the 3rd preseason game against the Bills. And then when we have the Green Bay Packers in week 1, Justin Fields is in rhythm. He is now ready to look like a regular season version of whatever he will be in 2023. And part of that is going to be, getting used to playing behind this revamped offensive line. I don't know if Nate Davis will play in week 1 of the preseason, but he's going to play at some point in the preseason. And you got to get used to taking snaps from Cody Whitehair and seeing what it feels like to have Darnell Wright being your right tackle. Because look, Darnell Wright's a big, large, wide man. Which, why does that matter? Well, Justin Fields has to find the right throwing lanes. He has to get used to throwing over a 6'6", 330-pound mass of a human. Quarterbacks have to adjust to that stuff too. So you want to have both tackles, that peripheral vision type of optics for Justin Fields to adjust to. Get used to, again, Cody Whitehair snapping the ball. Tevin Jenkins on the left side now instead of the right side. This is all a change for Justin Fields. Not to mention DJ Moore and getting back a healthy Darnell Mooney, hopefully building some actual preseason chemistry with Chase Claypool. This all matters, and it matters a lot. So anybody that tells you preseason football doesn't matter, it's overrated, it's just an injury risk, those are some valid points in terms of the injury risk. But to say it's overrated and doesn't matter is just completely, utterly wrong. And it's especially true. Like, try to tell a guy like Roschon Johnson, who he's got a chance to climb the depth chart if he starts off this preseason hot against the Titans and keeps showing every time he gets a chance to run the ball that he's a gamer. There have been very little practice reports, positive reports from coaches, from observers about Roschon Johnson so far during training camp. I think it's almost eerily silent because Roschon came into training camp as a player who Bears fans and front office members in Chicago were talking about like he could be the greatest 4th-round pick in the history of the NFL draft. And yet it's been like nothing. He has had some injuries. He missed some practices with an injury. We still don't know what that actually was. He's been participating in padded practices. There was one clip that made its rounds on X where it looked like he ran his trademark physical style, trucked Jalen Jones after catching a pass out of the backfield, but it's been very limited. We're hearing more about Trestan Ebner than Roschon Johnson, more about Deonta Foreman and Khalil Herbert than Roschon Johnson. So some of that early momentum that he kind of joined the roster with has quieted. He can jumpstart it. He could turn that volume way up again if he has a big preseason. So a 4th-round pick like Roschon Johnson, Tyler Scott, a 5th-round rookie wide receiver. If Chase Claypool doesn't play early in the preseason, Tyler Scott can announce his arrival as a player who deserves reps immediately in the passing game. This is how it happens. Preseason games are how it happens. Go back many years ago. Victor Cruz with the New York Giants had one of the most epic preseason runs in the history of football, and he turned into a multi-millionaire as a result of getting a chance and breaking through on the preseason stage. Tyler Scott is a more coveted player than Victor Cruz was at that time, but he could prove to be a valuable connection for Justin Fields in the absence of Chase Claypool. If that happens, a guy like Chase Claypool, he might not take that extra practice or two off. He might try to get back onto the practice field sooner, and that's the point of this. You're leveling up the competition. You're increasing the sense of urgency. Guys who might feel comfortable with their roster spot, they sit out a preseason game. Now there's that young rookie who's coming for blood. He's coming for their job. He wants to take that role, and it could push the veteran onto the field probably when they're ready. You don't want a guy rushing back sooner than they should if they're seriously risking injury. But who knows? Maybe Chase Claypool could gut it out in a regular season game. You won't do that for a preseason game unless the guy behind you is starting to show out and prove that he deserves those reps. So you have Roshan Johnson, you have Tyler Scott on offense. A kid like Tyson Badgett, an undrafted rookie free agent quarterback, there is a world that exists that he could make the final roster as the number 3 quarterback in Chicago. That world does exist. He has to be an absolute beast in the preseason. He'll get the most reps against the Titans in week 1. His rep count will dwindle as we go through the preseason. PJ Walker's will go up. Justin Fields will go up. It's going to kind of level off where it'll probably be a little Justin Fields, a lot of PJ Walker, then a little bit of Tyson Badgett as the preseason evolves down the road. But Badgett's going to have a chance. Make that first impression. Make it a lasting impression. Make sure that when Bears coaches watch the film of the preseason, you make it a really tough call for them to cut you. That's what has to happen. And I believe Tyson Badgett, when he gets on the field, mobile kid, big arm, for a third, think about something. Bears fans can be excited about the third string quarterback in the preseason because he is actually a talented rookie. Not all great quarterbacks get drafted. Obviously the top tier quarterback Hall of Famers are usually early round picks with a few rare exceptions like a Tom Brady, but that's lightning striking. But a Tyson Badgett can hang around as a long-term NFL backup. I mean, there's no reason why he can't. And maybe that quest starts now in the preseason. So it matters for those skill players. It matters on offense. It matters on defense. Gervon Dexter. Gervon Dexter is a second-round pick that the Chicago Bears should expect can develop into a starter this season. Justin Jones, Andrew Billings, good players, but not insurmountable. They can be jumped for the starting lineup. And if Gervon Dexter, this dude wins the get off the bus test among all the Chicago Bears defensive linemen. He looks the part, like you made him in a laboratory to be a dominant interior defensive lineman. If he has these get-off issues where he's slow off the snap, looks like he's going to struggle to penetrate because of his maybe instincts, maybe his football instincts are lacking a little bit off the snap, that could be a problem. You could get some clues, some breadcrumbs, some warning flags about Gervon Dexter's long-term projection if he looks a little sluggish, even though it's his first preseason or second preseason or third preseason game. Sometimes players are just who they are. And if a Gervon Dexter's reaction skills off the snap can't be coached up, or he hasn't, proven that what he was asked to do at Florida, this whole time there were concerns about Gervon Dexter's get off at the line of scrimmage. And we've been told as Bears fans, and if you watch the film, it is, well, look, he was asked at Florida to do certain things, essentially fill the gaps, not penetrate. And that's why he didn't look like this super explosive defensive lineman off the snap of the ball. Fine, no problem. We believe you. We buy into that narrative. But after a couple of weeks of Bears training camp, it seems like that issue is continuing to simmer and bubble up and become a little bit more problematic as his the start of his pro practices and career has gotten underway here. Let's see what happens when the bullets fly in a preseason game. He should be a guy who makes a splash play or two in a preseason game, especially if he gets into the game against backup offensive linemen. He should be able to make splash plays. Zach Pickens as well, a third-round pick. Which one of these guys is going to emerge, right? The chances that both of them become long-term starting defensive linemen for the Bears, it's probably less than 50-50. One of them has a chance to possibly be, one of them will emerge, in my opinion. I don't think they're both going to be busts. So it's going to be fun to watch this horse race, for lack of a better term, as these guys try to fight for that long-term interior hit from the 2023 NFL draft. We'll get a good appetizer for who these guys are in the preseason as early as the Titans game. What about Tyreek Stevenson at cornerback? Terrell Smith. These guys are going to be asked to compete for starting jobs. Can Tyreek Stevenson prove his second-round draft valuation was legit? He's had bad practices. He's had some good practices. He's got up days. He's had bad days. What is he going to do when the bullets fly? Everybody talks about him as a gamer, right? Tyreek Stevenson in these preseason games is a must watch because he's so critical to what the Bears have done this offseason. he's been talked about a lot. He's gotten his fair amount of airtime in terms of podcasts and digital print or digital media or websites everywhere. Been talking about Tyreek Stevenson as a likely starter with Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon as part of this young, exciting secondary. He's very important to this possible success of this defense. And again, like cornerbacks do have a little bit of a learning curve. There is a baptism by fire that these guys experience. Tyreek's been dealing with it by covering DJ Moore in practice, a Chase Claypool in practice, quality top tier, if not above, at the very least above average DJ Moore in that upper echelon of wide receivers in the league. He's not going to face a guy like that in his first preseason game against the Titans unless they match him up against DeAndre Hopkins. And even Hopkins is he's on the other end of his, the career hill. He's on the backside of that career. But Tyreek Stevenson, let's see what he does. If he gets burnt, if he gets picked on, if he's a guy that's letting up all these completions, it's not the end of the world. It's only one preseason game. But just like I was saying with Gervon Dexter, it's breadcrumbs. It's little clues, okay? Just like if Tyreek Stevenson shows he's a lockdown guy, it's breadcrumbs. There's some clues that this guy might actually be a long-term outside corner for the Bears. These are, and look, rookies in the preseason, we all love watching the rookies because it's like the shiny new sports cars come out of the showroom and we get a chance to see how they look. We've only seen practice videos, pictures, things like that. Now you actually see them on the field. And Darnell Wright, we end this with the first round pick. I am going to be watching Darnell Wright more than any other player this preseason because the Bears made a very bold, strategic decision to select him with their first round pick. There were other offensive linemen on the board. There was Jalen Carter was available when they traded down with the Philadelphia Eagles. There was a lot invested in Darnell Wright and the scouting report Ryan Poles and his staff had on him. Offensive linemen have a very steep learning curve. It's even more difficult than cornerbacks. So I am expecting Darnell Wright to have some whoops moments at right tackle in the preseason. But I'm also expecting Darnell Wright to show us why he was the number 10 pick. Just maul somebody in the run game. Stonewall somebody in pass protection. Just have a few reps where you're like, this dude is a dude. And we understand why he's a top 10 pick, one of the highest drafted offensive linemen in team history, the most important draft pick aside from quarterback that this team has made in many, many, many years. A player with that much riding on his very wide shoulders needs to show fans and the team in the preseason that his pick was the right pick. It all gets started with the preseason. Look, again, you get to trust your eyes. Bears beat reporters, I love you guys. I love you gals. You're all great at what you do. But I don't really care what you say. Like, I don't really listen to your opinion. Like, a lot of times, look, I had the experience, a very fortunate experience to serve as a scout for a CFL team. And I was charged with attending practices and going to all-star games. And I asked the general manager of that team that when I was deployed to an all-star game, I said, well, there's so many guys on the field. There's like 100 players between two practices of each roster. How am I going to give you guys an evaluation or a report of all these players? And the GM said to me, you can't. You're not going to be able to. Like, just focus on one position group each practice, each day, and make it your best effort to give a thorough report of that position group on that day. So when I see beat reporters, 1 minute they're talking about Justin Fields from practice, and then the next minute they're talking about offensive lineman, and the next minute it's a defensive lineman. Oh, this cornerback did this, and all the running back. Based on experience, I kind of know they're looking at a lot, but they're not really looking at anything. So I like when the games start going on, for real, the preseason games kick off, we can kind of like mute some of these guys on Twitter, right? We don't have to worry about what beat reporter A says that might conflict with beat reporter B, and beat reporter C is getting sour over Bears fans saying something here or there. It's all noise. And now the noise finally can come to an end because you Bears fans can watch with your own eyes. And you can go on to Twitter/X/whatever and actually have a more informed opinion. You can have some real Bears talk and not be force-fed the narrative, not be told what to think about this team, not be told what to think about your quarterback or your offensive line or your wide receivers or your running backs. Now you can make the Bears talk. You can create the narrative. You can share your opinion. That's what I love. I love interacting with fellow Bears fans about the depth players, the deep dive players, the guys that are clawing for roster spot 53. And we'll be able to do that on social media. Make sure you're following me, Bryan Perez NFL. Make sure you're following the website at The Bears Talk on Twitter. Go over to Facebook, like the Bears Talks Facebook page. All of our content gets posted there as well. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. We want to get to 10,000. Share it with your friends, your family, any Bears fans that you know, general football fans that you know. We're going to be talking a lot of NFL draft as the months go on. A lot of great content planned for this channel. So make sure, Bears fans, come back after the Titans game. We will have a complete, total deep dive on that game and every preseason game from here on out. Bears fans, keep your head up and bear down.